All right, guys. So for today, the idea is how to go from left. That's last project, right? Project number 3. What are some of the elements that we're adding the that existing for renders? Lights, right? Lights. Okay, so what kind of lights? Spotlights, right? Definitely. What other ones? What's the big one, right? The sunlight, right? The big old sun and the ambient light. Okay, so those are there. So the idea is that most of the time, 90% of the time, what we get out of Rhino is actually the final product. There's what's called post-production. You guys heard of that term? Like for movie making, or a lot of creative work. That's what it is, right? So we're going to get out of software, and then we have the last lesson. Let's see what has changed right here. Notice the sky has some clouds. See what's in? What else? What else is different? People. I'm adding people. Now this is here with this project, and I really love this paper. It's the most exciting one because this project, right, takes up its own life. I think all of us can create, all of us can generate this image, but it's this here that brings us to the project, right? You only have a certain amount of images that you can use in order to set this project, right? Remember, for the most part, this project we're not done yet. They're not built. They haven't been built other than in our head, right? And paper. So you're trying to right? What this project could be. That's the importance of this. So why do I bring this up? Because the people that you use, right? The people that you throw in there, right? It has a lot to do with the scene. Right? So as you can see, black and white, couples, could be families, right? Someone exercise. What else? How about right here on the side? You guys haven't asked me, right? So we have done the conversation. How do I have a tree in front of my building, and how do I represent it right now? And you can, but again, it's much faster and it's huge. You guys have problems with it as well. It's not only about adding people and adding stuff. What are these guys? Okay. So again, there's all these little tricks that again, your eyes are looking at real or not. So again, some of these shadows are also so we can be absent of those. And from there, I mean, pretty much anything that you want. Now in this case, we got tacky, right? So you want to play really tacky, put the fireflies in there, right? Why not? Right? Usually, I mean, you'll see birds right here flying. Morning, we're feeling yesterday, so also beautiful sea, beautiful fireflies, right? How to create this right now. So this is where we left off, right? So drastic change from there to there, right? So and again, you can think of Rhino as modeling with clay, and then you fire it, and then you paint it, and that would be the rendering part of it, which is this object right here. So let's go through some more quick things before as you set up your renders. Okay, I have already created some before the class today, just so that we don't have to wait for them to render. Curious, how are those renderings going in terms of time? What's the longest that you had to wait, for example, Priscilla? 14 minutes? 40? Already you're working with 40 minutes? Okay, anyone else? Top that? Hopefully not. 40 minutes? Okay, 40 minutes is
you know, it's a reasonable amount of time for a high resolution image. Let's see, lecture and renders. All right. So again, remember, this is a process. Okay. The first time that you hit render won't probably, unless you're, you know, you're lucky or know pretty much what you're doing exactly, you're not gonna get the results that you want. All right. So I started there with that image, you know, putting it in. I thought it was too yellow. The sun was too down. I mean, remember that we were going for that sunset image. I created another one, right? And with materials and lighting. Now, two images that you want to get at the end, right? It's one with a right? Literally, if you were to measure right now your screen, a couple of inches by a couple of inches, right? Right now, that would be, and I'm sorry, it's not actually your screen, it's your viewport, right? So that's why if I go to viewport, by default, you're gonna have these settings right here. I'm looking at this right here. Dimension, viewport, give you those numbers that by that, which right here, those same numbers, right there, we rarely, well, we as generally speaking, we work with inches. Right. So if you're just curious, you actually have those units right there. So you can click right there. Notice how those numbers change. All right. Now it goes from a 4.99 to a 2.5. So that would be the size of this viewport right here on my screen. Right now, this is being casted from my laptop to the screen right there. Right? So it's a different viewport size that I have right here. Now, what you actually want to do later on for your projects, you actually want to go to a custom size. Okay, so we click custom. Notice that as soon as we do that, everything, but except for that, right? It's layers. So you can see how important layer management is in this case, right? All of these components have been added in post-production, right? So plants on the lower left, more plants, etc. All right. So let's go through this, and let me close this guy right here, and we do. So once you get your renderings out, right, you have the oblique, left oblique, right oblique, 4 views, right? The front view and the zoom in, right? You're gonna get your images like that. The first thing that we want to do, right click, open with Adobe Photoshop. That's the first thing that I want to do.
One that you render high quality, final quality, 300 or more DPI, that's the one that you pull. That's the one that on yours.
First thing, well, the second thing that we do after opening this, file, save as. I'll create a new folder right here, 1 p.m. and call this something that you can recognize. So it should already be within your class folder. So we can call this, again, this is, I think, my left oblique. And, you know, might be working on this really tired at 4 a.m. in the morning. Okay? So I am extra cautious and I call this, not oblique, by final. Right? So that I know that this is it. This is the final one. So I go ahead and click save. Okay, this option pops up. Okay. All right, guys. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to open the image that has no background. Right? welcome to follow this. You're welcome to use this. All different projects have called or have made me look for different things. Is this board right here? Right, this is Pinterest. Talked about it early in the semester. Right? Hopefully you have one. If you don't, create one. It's a lifesaver. Truly, it is. Right. So I have this board called Graphic Models and Post-Production. What does that mean? Well, this is my database. I have skies that I can use. I have hummingbird, right? Because nothing makes something look more dreamy than a hummingbird right there. And then I have a series of trees, people, and you name it. And not only that, I want you guys to look at also the styles. This is a digital illustration of people. Oh man, internet. Oh no. Right. Here we go. So I have sort of a cartoon-looking images. I have what's called silhouettes. I have actual real people. I have black and white. Somehow it's really fun to see kind of like people in some of these images. And it's called, you know, maybe turn it black and white. So I like to collect some of those, or kind of like this ladies. Notice too that not all my trees are real, right? I really like also this kind of watercolor ones. So I can remember, again, these ideas that rendering, like, or digital rendering is like, whatever. That's actually quite hard. A lot of media right here. So I found those watercolor trees. Let's see what else I have. This guy, which I'm going to be using right now. Again, more people, and it's not only about people or objects, but it's what view, right? What's going on with these people right here? Yeah, right. Okay, top view. What would I use those for? Right. Well, what's a drawing that you look at a building from that way top? What kind of drawing? Yes, right. A forklift, right? Right now we're working with renderings, but also you might be working with architectural drawings, elevation, section, and workments. Right? You have these people from the top view, which you can then include in your workman, segments. So that matters. And then again, each project calls for different things, right? I mean, if there's a bike lane or you want bike-friendly objects, find someone with a bicycle, right? Trees, right? Trees from the top. I also have, again, leaves kind of falling. Cars, of course, furniture, rugs, street poles, street lights. Some of you guys model them. That's much better. Again, cars from the top. So again, right? The last thing that you want to do while you're working on these renderings is spend 20 minutes or 15 minutes with images. So you can really get excited. Just okay, I'm looking for. I was working on recycling, and workers, people with working outfits. And here I am, and that's already that, and just spend an hour just looking at images. Not the best thing to do. But our brain will allow us to because it's fun. Okay, that way, if you create your own board, you go immediately to it. You don't waste time, and more importantly, you're familiar with your images. You're already familiar with the images that you have collected. All right, guys. So I created already a folder right here with some of those images, and I was just cleaning up my space right here. So we go to digital media, projects, no, lectures. Questions so far? No? All right, I guess. It's not giving me here the preview, but these are the images that I selected that I'm going to use today. And I'll share them with you guys. I mean, you're more than welcome to use some of these ones. I'm not going to use all of them. It gives you guys an idea. Right? Even textures. Right? Start creating a folder with just your favorite textures. All right. The first one that I'm going to use is that sky right there. So right click, open with Adobe Photoshop. Cool, right? Very striking image. Click and drag. All right, close this. Now, Control T is the command that you want to use to resize. Alright, so Control T brings out this handle right here on the end of your image. Full shift. And we want to size this sky as big as we need it in our image. So I do this, right? Do that, and do that. All right, press enter. You see how it looks pixelated? That's because of preview. Press enter, and here we have that. Okay, so I'm gonna place it right there. I am going to turn it off, and look at this beauty. If I press W, right? What does W bring up? Or it's also a quick selection. Options or Alright, so what I do is I W, select that background right there. Now I turn off the image, right? I bring on the sky, and look at that. We have that outline of the sky itself. Right? Now we actually want the opposite of that. So we go to select, inverse, and if you press delete, select, inverse, delete, all right? You have what happens? Well, I use the solid color to select that solid color because they have no gradient, and then I selected the inverse of that and deleted that. And this is really actually what I wanted, which was the sky resin. Roll. Well, we're done with that. Control D to deselect, and we have a sky. Okay, so I turn it on and off right there. Now, opacity. Opacity is going to be your best friend developing these images, okay? Right now, for me, that's really, really deep. It's too much. So we go to this option right here to the bottom right, and let's turn it down. And at first, it might seem like it's too much, but remember, from our first project, we learned that colors are actually much deeper than they're actually in the screen. There's a light behind the screen. It's casting a light. So you make it more vibrant and brighter. But when we frame it becomes dull and very dark, like the pigments of the paper, right? The pigments on the paper. So we have our style. And remember, the opacity right now I have a 49. But it's going to really a recipe for this. Each project for a different method. All right, so we have a sky that again we can play with, and not only that, the idea is that the color on the background blends. In this case, it's blue, a little blue, right? It blends in with those clouds that I have added. All right, guys. So let's work now on some of these plants and trees. Okay, do the same thing right here, and it's not giving me previews, but working with that. Work with that right there. which is this image. So again, you go to your image, right click, open with Adobe Photoshop. Okay. Duplicate. And again, this is a review, right, from the last Photoshop introduction. We duplicate the layer, turn off the background, W for 1, and we go around and we delete the background, right? Notice that it goes from that solid white color, what's called your checkerboard pattern right there. Delete that right there, delete that right there, that. And no, I am not going to go through all of the white spots right there. That's very time consuming. And that's why, again, you'll see how opacity helps us disguise some of that. Of course, the more demanding the project is, in your advanced studios, in your advanced work, you're definitely perhaps, and once you feel more comfortable with the softwares, you're going to spend much more time on these images. For the right now, most likely we leave them for the night before, or a very, very last part of the project itself. So I'm going around, deleting this right here, all those white areas right there, particularly the large ones. Okay. So trees are one of the most intricate, as you can see, because of all the detail that it has. But quite worth it. And again, what's the idea? Once you create one-for-one project, it's not only for that project. You save it onto your drive, and you already have it there for any project. Okay, and that's what we actually, or what you see in offices, right? You have a database of the objects that you always use. All right, guys. So I'm gonna leave that one right there. Then what do? We float our window. Selection tool, top left. Click, drag, release. Close this guy right here. In this case, let's do a yes and save this, right? I mean, plant 1, and this will become now your master file right there for those plants right there that you can use for any project. All right, guys, so we have it there. Now we press Control T again, blow it up right here, press Enter. All right, now and again, this is part of where the art kicks in and the placement of objects, right? I wouldn't place it right here because, again, it's these edges right here where objects collide and they meet that they really tell off if, the quality of the render. So what I like to do is hide those edges, maybe something like that, right? Maybe even a little bit bigger. Enter. What do? Opacity. All right? So we kind of ghost it out. We do that right there. And not only that, once you do one, right, I can hold Alt key. You guys remember? Click and drag. And what am I creating? A copy. Thank you, Ryan. All right, so I create a copy of that. And just like nature is, right? I mean, it varies. I'm actually going to make that copy smaller. I press Control T one more time. And I bring it a little bit smaller right there. Maybe like that. I create another copy right here. Maybe this one's a little bit bigger, and I move it a little bit. You want to add variety. In this case, we are trying to fool the eye. We're trying to give the impression that this is a scene that doesn't exist. The project doesn't exist, again. All right. So we create that, and not only can I copy and resize them, but if we go to, let's see, edit, transform, we can actually flip it. And by flip, I mean mirror it. All right, so if you look to the plant on the bottom right corner, flip horizontal, it changed the direction of it. And we're gonna hide it maybe somewhere there. I'm gonna maybe exaggerate this a little bit, extra large right there. For all my photography fanatics right here in class, right? That idea of capturing your foreground and background. We have that. Where are these? I maybe make one more copy and make this guy a little bit smaller right there. All right, guys. Right there. Okay, so we have added some plants. Now let's bring in about some trees. Right? Some of these trees right here. Notice that I use two different trees, right? This one's kind of like a watercolor tree, and this one's a photograph of a real tree. Except that was a really bad quality tree, but I think we're gonna have to work with that. And again, that's the payoff. Again, a lot of these things on Pinterest and other software, they are free, but they're really bad quality. There's other places such as this one, textures.com. To be honest with you, I just found it, and there's tons of them that you can actually download them. But either in this case, you have to create an account. It tells you right here, 1 credit to download a small quality one, medium. I don't know what the credits are. Sometimes you actually have to upload in order to download, meaning that you upload your own images so that anyone else can use them. And you're going to find already cropped images and much higher resolution. But, you know, as students, well, we work with what we find, and what works for us with usually it comes with a free tag, right? So we'll do that. Let me find those trees. And that would be this sheet right here. So as you can see, right, it's like, oh wow, that's really cool. It has a bunch of trees, right? Well, yes, except that it's really bad quality. So that's 4F6, 4F6, right click, open with Adobe Photoshop, duplicate the layer, right click, duplicate layer, hit OK, turn off your background image. Again, the key idea here is whatever you find, people, trees, cars, anything, that it has what kind of background? Huh? A solid background, all right? The color, remember, you guys seen those making of movies, especially visual effects, you know, the green screen or the blue screen. That's the idea. Right? I mean, that you can actually replace that green screen, blue screen with the background that you want right there. So any solid color, right? That being said, you can always grab any image and Photoshop the heck out of it. Now that's a lot of work. Right? So again, I'm showing you guys something. Let's say that it's due tomorrow, right? You just gotta produce a rendering that is due like, or you know, in a couple of hours. Okay. So W for one, click on the background, delete. Okay, I have gotten rid of that white background. I can already tell it's like, wow, that's really pixelated. All right, let's see how bad it is. Press letter M for or go to your marquee tool. We're using this tree right here. We selected, and again, this is just a review from your midterm project. We go to our direct selection tool, click, drag, and drop. Did it work? There we go. Can you guys see it? It's right there. It's like a broccoli rather than a tree, right? So that already should be a really big warning, guys. Okay, and I'm actually showing you, you know, what not to do, right? So that you can see how, you know, the consequences of this, right? But at this point, you should already be like, nah, I gotta go back and find another image, because if it's that small, I press Control T, right, and then I blow this thing up, right, and say maybe there, enter. Well, you have that. And it's like I said, my glasses or what, right? Now, again, you can get away with some of it, right, with your opacity. Okay, I'll show you. So bring it down, and right. So again, remember, this image is at the end. It's not about how free your trees are. Definitely architecture involves features, but what's the focus of the images? So that's why it's really fun to actually tone down what's going what's going on there. You find what's called context. This is like urban setting, blah, blah, blah. But you don't want to overdo it, at least as we began with this. So I'll leave it. I'll leave it for right now. Let's work with a different type of tree now. These ones that are watercolor. I really like them. Say that. And that one right there, that would be image 8327. 8327. Right click, open with, Adobe Photoshop. Right click, duplicate layer, hit OK, hide the background. I'm zooming in a little bit right there. One, to select the background. You have your marching ants right there. Click delete. Zoom in there. And again, just going to do a little bit of this right here. So delete right there. Again, especially the larger openings, and again, our eye is pretty much well trained how nature works, right? And so once we start seeing some of those solid whites right there on our image, our brains immediately tells us there's something off right there. And so it's important to take care of as many as we can of those right here, right? Kind of going. Remember, you can change the settings of your selection right here. Right now, I'm on a tolerance of 20, right? Because that's what's working for this. But if you set something higher, potentially you could go faster, right? Just don't want to do too much that you start cutting off a lot from the tree. Now with nature and foliage, it's very forgiving because it's not perfect. If you cut the face out of someone in a weird way, you immediately see that because it's a human. On nature, right, the more imperfections sometimes that you get, the more realistic that it looks. All right, I'll leave that right there again. Float my window, selection tool, click, drag, and drop. Now, not as bad, not ideal, but it's a different technique, and it's actually interesting how it works differently. So press Control T, transform, and I blow this up. Since this image is being hand drawn, right, it's not as bad. I mean, yes, it was small, but it already had some imperfections natural to it. Right, I would definitely get rid of that. Right, with my marquee tool, press the letter M, select it, delete. And again, rather than placing the tree like that, again, these areas right here, again, if we go outside, and this is where, again, this really makes you start looking at people differently. Right? When you start walking, smell the roses. Right? And then you look how the roses, connect to the ground, right? And what's around it. That's going to make you a better artist. Oh, okay, there's actually oh, okay. That's how it works naturally. So let's hide that. All right, so increase that right there. That right there. Enter, and definitely, right, you don't want to cover your project like that. You might already have a tree, kind of like in Priscilla's case, or some of you guys that is already in front or itself right there at of the project. But if that's not the case, I would try to send it to the side. Right? And maybe even, kind of like that. And again, that's too much. Right? So I'm going to turn on the opacity right here. And we have a happy little tree like that. A la Bob Ross. All right, you guys get that joke. Okay, cool. I like that. Bob Ross, oh man, that guy's awesome. All right, so we do that. Again, I'm trying to cover as much as I can this area right there. Right, maybe bring out some of these plants right here. So you can see how you can spend here hours and hours and hours. Trees. All right, we have a tree right there. Let's see what else. Oh, Mr. Edwardson's right there. Get off my lawn kind of guy, right? Reading the newspaper. Well, that's also Photoshop, and brought that guy in. God knows what he's hitting on, like a pipe or something. But I thought that was neat. So let's find him. insert image right there. Right click, open with Adobe Photoshop. Wrong one. For some reason, it's not giving me my previews. The computer's not liking me right now. There you go. This one's easy, right? I mean, facilitate your life as well by selecting images that, you know, ladies, right? If you want to put the girl right there, you know, with all these exotic, or dudes, right? I mean, sure, right? But hair and trees, that's some of the toughest ones, right? Because it's very organic, and you know, you can really tell when you have met someone's hair or head. Okay, so in this case, no worries. There's a hat and the guy is bald. So easy, right? So selection tool. See, that's what happens when your tolerance is too high. Right now it's at 40. Right now I will be cropping, and let me show you guys. I'll be cropping part of this guy's back. Okay? That's not good. So I'm gonna bring down my tolerance to 20. It was working nice for me. So I do that, right? And it goes perfectly around it. Delete. Control D to deselect. Let me close this tree right here, not using it. That's the original. All right. So we click and drag and drop. All right, guys. So people, trees is forgiving. The size of it is people. It's a different story. It's not the same to have Mr. What was his name? Mr. Huh? Mr. Emerson, sure. It's not the same to have Mr. Emerson kind of there than over here. All right. All of a sudden, what happened? They get smaller. All right. So it has to do about scale, but now I can put them right there on this roof, right there, maybe there. All right. But notice that as you place the object in different places, it changes size without you actually changing the size of it. Trippy, huh? Yeah. But again, so the idea right here is that you find something that you can more or less correlate the size of things. So the size of the head, the height of the person. Okay, so I model those doors, I model those are 80, 90, 10 feet, so that means the person should be about this height. If it's 10 feet, it should be right. So the moment that I put the line, maybe if it's closer over here, should be bigger. If I want to send them right there to the back, it should be smaller. You give something maybe like that, right? It's like, is that like a kid's house or something? I mean, because if this guy stands up, it's gonna hit his head right there. Okay, that's one of the first things that student rendering is kind of like, I don't know, Right? I do my best right there. Maybe okay, so that column's about 2 feet right there. You know, I mean, it should be a little bit bigger than the door because of the perspective. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that you can actually make them bigger, right? Because that you just have to send it to the front, right? Maybe now here, Mr. Emerson or whatever, right? He's now on the corner of a drawing, right? And maybe it doesn't even have to be fully. Right? You can also just incorporate people, maybe kind of like that. Looks like he's somewhere else, but you know, you could. Right? So what this means is just keep an eye in terms of your proportion, right, and sizes. So I'm gonna again send them to the porch, right? Maybe somewhere there. And don't worry, your instructor will point it out. How does that look? A little bit bigger, a little smaller? Sure. Right? Say somewhere there. Okay. Again, though, something that helps us, opacity, right? Even personally, at least for me, for people. Now, again, remember, I'm sharing my personal approach to this, what I have done, what I
That is what you guys like, what you guys want, or what your instructor, or more importantly, your boss or supervisor is looking for. All right? So if one of these teachers are like, oh no, well, I'm trying to be artsy. Don't be artsy. Put a real person right there. Be like, okay.
You can apply that. All right? And that goes for anything that you learn in general, right? Different instructors have a different approach, different architects. It's artistic, so it varies. All right, guys. Something that I want to show you, very important as well, is again, yes, how to incorporate people. I want to work with this couple right here, 609 image, 609, right? Open with Photoshop. The background real quick. That's why you need to create a copy of this. You cannot edit the background layers. Duplicate layer right there. Hide that. Delete. Delete. Forget about these little details right here. Right? That's still white. So delete that. Delete that. All right. And Control D to deselect. Click and drag and drop. So once you have set up one person like that, right? Let's say that now I want to place these guys right here. So again, tiny little guys, right? Not really working. But if you give yourself a guideline of an eye level, say that now eye level of Mr. Garris or whatever, right? When he stands up, is there, which then maybe he should be smaller. Right? These guys should match that line right there. I mean, their eyes sort of meet that line right there. That would be your horizon line. Okay? And that's usually where your eyes lay. If you're standing up, whoops. So I hit enter right there. Okay, so maybe do something like that. Because again, these guys are approaching the building, so they should be bigger. They're actually going there. So I get rid of this guy. Now, a part of textures and all the things that will give your drawing away is also shadow.
I have right here. And more importantly, what else? Over here, how bright this is. Darker over here. The sun wasn't but we also have again, so we have the sun, and we also have this light. So perhaps you get to a baseball game, you have the players right on the field. You actually see that they have like four shadows. You guys seen that? And actually have like it's a pattern. That's because there's no spotlight off above them.
So again, you're standing up, you have a light shining this way, shining this way. So what does that mean? In this case, and I'll show you guys, we did it on this other one, we're gonna have more than one light source, right? Which is this one right here. Right? So we have those shadows going that way and this shadows going there. Okay, and it's very simple. It's another trick that it's a lifesaver. So how do we do this? Shadows. Okay, shadows. How do we cast a simple shadow? And again, simple shadow. Okay, you can really complicate this easily. The first thing I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is going to put some order right here in these layers. So this layer is called couple. I'm going to right click, duplicate layer, and make this couple shadow. And I'm going to send it to the bottom of it, so the order matters. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the original. So in terms of shadows, what's the characteristic of a shadow?
It's distorted, right? It's stretched out. That's actually a great observation. And number three, that cast a shadow. Like putting a cover. Our shadows allow the water
it on, you can still see its surface. For us, what does that mean right here in Photoshop? Opacity, right? So those are the three characteristics. Ready? So color. We take the copy of the layer. Remember, I'm working with a copy. Okay? We take the copy of the layer. I turn off the original just so that it doesn't throw me off. I'm working on the copy. Image, adjustments, hue and saturation. The first thing that we do is get rid of the color. Okay. Color out. Hit OK. The second one, what was it, Ryan? Stretch, all right? Which here it's called edit, transform, distort. Edit, transform, distort. Okay, my handles appear again. Check this out. And as Ryan says, right, it's usually this very odd form. On the angle of the light. Right? So, but you actually want to do that with the original on so that you can have it as a reference. So, edit, transform, distort, boom. All right. So all of a sudden, Peter Pan has got his shadow back. All right. Okay. So you can be as dramatic, right? Maybe you can, but again, careful, right? You want to follow your own rules. And then lastly, whoops, our opacity. Right? And notice how little it is. Now, an extra touch that we should add a little bit here. It's again, shadows are not totally fine. The outline of the shadow, it's not a hard edge. That's what I'm saying. So one little last step that we can do, and I'll turn it up a little bit darker, is if you go to filter, blur, and there's all sorts of blurs. If it's moving, sometimes I like to use the motion blur, but if it's static, let's use the Gaussian blur. What does that do? Let me turn it down. Look at the shadow, and I'm gonna move the slider. All right, kind of distorts it, and it's hard to see on the projector, but you look at it closer, it blurs it a little bit. It removes that hard edge. So after you distort it, and after you turn on the opacity, add some sort of blur to it. Okay, so we hit OK. And of course, the original, I'm gonna turn it down. Whoa. Okay. Now, let's work on one more shadow because this one's interesting. Right? It defies the laws of nature. Okay. So, couple, duplicate layer, and this is going to be called couple shadow 2. And again, image, adjustments, or hue and saturation, control U, turn on the color there, okay it. Now, there's the shadow, all right? So, or mirror, right? And you can see it, right? So your first, right, should be right here in the center, right? That left arm should be right here in the left side. His right arm should be on the right. So I'm going to show you guys how things change a little bit. source of this. Okay, so if I go to edit, transform, distort, I can try to follow that, right? But the command doesn't like it, right? Oh, there we go. Now we have it. So I had to flip it, okay? Because that's where the light source is coming from. And even better, you can see that it's not quite entire there. And again, try to you know, have the origin match. That's where the feet are. Maybe noticing that it's a little bit more this way right here. Right, and we press enter. Let me show you guys the blur right here, Gaussian blur. And again, if I bring it somewhere there, right, that turns it into a blur like that. That you can start playing with that right there. So it's a hard edge right there versus a blurry image right there. Okay, and definitely some additional opacity. That, man, that's hard. And these guys, they're about to buy this house as a Mr. What else? How about oh yeah, or again, if you want to make it extra tacky, I can, or I mean, depends. And again, for example, I mean, do these butterflies ever cross El Paso or the area? Apparently, I heard that they do. Apparently, they do cross El Paso migrating or whatnot. Someone in the morning was letting me know. But again, so think about the nativity. Is that the right word? Native. Things native to your rendering. You're working in the certain part, particularly here in the desert. Well, I mean, maybe desert animal, desert plants, desert skies, desert backgrounds, right? Not necessarily that you give us white sands there or the dunes, but again, something that again, you don't look, or your image doesn't look off. Anyway, butterflies, because love is in the air apparently in this image. So we right click, very simple. Want right there. Well, let's duplicate the layer. Okay, hide that guy right there. Background, delete, deselect, click and drag. Now, and again, maybe I'm being extra dramatic, right? Well, do they have to be fully there? Hey, what happened? Maybe they actually just like that. Right, not all of them, or no. Maybe. No, I like that. Yeah, maybe kind of like. Oh, so enter and opacity right there. I think I had some bird somehow. I don't know about the hummingbird, but and again, anything really that you can think about, especially now with the internet. Oh, there we go. So right click, save image as 56. Come over here. Do you guys see it? Oh, there it is. Open with Adobe Photoshop. A little larger right there. That's too much. Somewhere over there. And in this case, it has some tones or some gradients. It's actually a photograph. I'm actually going to remove that and turn it into a silhouette. Image, adjustments, hue and saturation. Kind of like that. It stands out a little bit more. maybe somewhere there. Okay, so there's a lot, I mean, this is it's a very fun, can be very creative. You can spend a lot of time on this. So also manage your time and be cautious with that. Remember what the actual objective of your image is going to be. Why are you making this? What for? Do you really need to have that bench there or spend all this time cropping this person out of there? Like, what are you going to get out of that? Is it worth it, your time? Okay, if not, just again, remember what's the intention of this image. Don't forget, file save. Sure. Now, there's one more thing that I want to show you guys, which is quickly how to play a little bit with textures in here in Photoshop. Okay, because not all the materials have to be applied as a rendering. You can actually apply materials right here on the Photoshop. So let's say I'm going to turn off all of these images. Let's say that these buildings right here, which are my neighbors, I wanted to make them out of concrete for whatever reason. So you guessed right, I have a concrete texture. So it was this one. Yeah. Right click, open with Adobe Photoshop. Now in this case, I'm not going to crop it there. I'm just going to bring the image right here. Okay, and that's a texture. So you can do this in multiple ways. So I'm just going to rotate this, enter right there. So I wanted to cover this space right here. How could I do that? So I want to take a rectangle and make it the shape of this form right there. Right? Dang, good. Thanks, Alisa. Correct. Right? We can try distort. So we go to edit, edit, transform, distort. So let's say that you forgot to add a material in rendering, or you were just done rendering. Right? Like, oh man, I'll just do it in Photoshop. You can do it this way. I mean, you can map your textures, which is technically what the software does, in a much more sophisticated way, perhaps. Right. Do that right there. All right. Enter. So that we're done with our transformation. Of course, layer matters, layer order. In this case, the concrete is covering those plants right there. That should not be the case. So I'm going to drag my layer pretty low. And we add our opacity. And we add the opacity in a big way so that we actually, okay, so look at the surface, right? I'm going to add the transparency, and actually I don't need to recreate the shadow because it's actually using the shadow original from the software, right, from the rendering. So that's actually pretty neat. And it's a nice little trick as well of how to add textures and don't, spend all this time doing that. Right? So in this case, it's not seen a lot, but, we can create that again right on this end right here. So file, save. Let's do that real quick and just add right there. I think it was this one right here. Right click, open with Adobe Photoshop. Float this right here, click and drag. I'm just gonna minimize this right here. Let's turn off some of this right here. This is my layer right here. I'm gonna make a copy. Right. Now, objects like this one, that's where it gets a little bit trickier. But let's see if we have luck. So first thing that I do, take care of the easy one first. So whoops. And place it maybe somewhere there. Image, is it on already? Oh no. Go, enter, move it right there. Image, edit, transform, stored. Edit right there, enter, opacity down. Okay, now this one right here, form, rotate it, let's scale it up. Right, you need to use this image, right, to cover this right there. And it's like, oh man, how do I do that? Well, the first thing that you need is a selection. Okay, so go to one right there. Make sure that you're on that layer, that particular layer. So we select that. And this is where actually increasing the tolerance would help. Right, actually, you know what? Better than that, what other selection could I use? Right, because of the form of this. My lasso tool. Right, actually much easier and faster. Right, if I select that right there. That right there. And then if you hold shift, you can add to that selection. All right, I have that. Let me turn off that image so you see what we have. All right, I have that selection right there. There's something very helpful that is called select save selection. Right, because sometimes you need to again make a selection and you use that selection for a number of times, and it's very time consuming to be doing one over and over and over again. So we can save that selection. I'm going to call this left wall concrete. Click OK. I deselect. I move my image back again in place. Right. I go to select, load selection, left wall concrete. OK. Okay, you see what happened? I have that selection like there, except that I need the inverse. Good job. Control I. Whoa, that actually does the inverse of the color. Let's go to select, inverse. I'm on the right layer, yes. All right, hit delete. Ta-da. Have that right there, turn on the opacity, and we have that right there. I'll actually take care of this corner a little bit with edit, transform, distort just a tiny bit. Careful, because some of your edges can start kind of getting weird. So let me turn it on and off. Oh, one last thing. It does have an opacity. Good, because the shadows are working. All right, so we go from a solid texture to a textured surface. Wait, from a solid surface to a textured surface. And turn all of this on. So again, remember, rendering or creating a rendered image doesn't stop at a Rhino. As a matter of fact, that's how you start. But the final result gets done, and the nice results, right? I mean, that really, good looking, and I call it with the spirit, right? With kind of like a soul, an image with a soul, that comes from that creative part of Photoshop. So last thing, file save. This is a Photoshop file. All right, the last thing we do is do a file save as a JPEG. Right, we hit save, hit OK, and we go to our folder right here, and again, that's that's the image that we created right now. This is well, technically this was the original. Those right there, minimize that, close that, close that. Fun, exciting. It's more fun once you work on it. I mean, not just watching me, but questions perhaps. Yeah, I mean, maybe not yet. Again, best way to address any questions or how questions really come out is working on this. So once you start working on this, and by your own sort of how do you call them, ambition, like, oh man, I really really want to get this done, or you find an example online. Again, I show you guys some of this, right? And I also have a board just on renderings because again, there's right now the idea, or a lot of it is doing what's called photorealistic renderings. I mean, this really, really, really trying to erase or blend in the reality, right? But internet's being slow. But I also like a different kind of look, right? It kind of looks like the collage kind of look, right? It's kind of what I mean. I mean, we know that the sky is not pink like that, at least not always. I mean, the people is black and white. They're kind of retro. So there's different styles. Right? There's different styles of rendering. Very, 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 very nice examples right here, right? Of that. This right here, for example, it's very nice how it's the frame of the rendering, but then you see that the people is actually outside of the frame. That's a very neat technique. So again, don't you know, you're gonna do more, right? This would be might be your first rendering, this might be your second, or you have already experience. But and in order to get to this level right here, is that a photograph or a rendering? It's quite a bit of not only work but experience, because again you have to really understand reflections, materials, how does water behave versus concrete and brick, what has more reflectivity than other materials, translucency, etc., right? But again, it doesn't mean that you want to go that route either. And again, just so you know, most likely this will be kind of like the work, at least for me, was definitely one of the first things that I would do in a job. I mean, these images of renderings, not that, right? But this kind of images right there. As an intern, you know, I mean, either a 3D model or a rendering of an image, right? Like this, you know, and you know, if they allowed you, you get creative. It's like, oh man, I've seen this in other images. How do you create that streak right there? Here I am Googling, right? I mean, boom, Photoshop, glow technique, or whatever. Right? I mean, right. So or kind of like those images right there, the renderings, right, and out of a 3D model. But also know that not every office, especially nowadays, puts now that time and effort into them. Right. This is an office out of San Francisco. It's called Transparent House, and this is the only thing that, well, it sounds a little bit. The only thing that they do is representation, both for industrial design or for architecture, right? Product, interactive, or architecture. And that includes renderings, movies, and now what's really popping right now, or really popular, is virtual reality. Right? You give them a model of your project, they develop a model so that your client can put some glasses right there and they can actually walk through the project. But again, this office is the only thing that they do, right? Renderings. And we work with them a lot. In this particular office that I worked on, we will give them the 3D model and they work on the rendering. So don't feel, or at least I personally always felt like, man, I really want to achieve that photorealistic result without realizing just how much, you know, I did not know to create those. And to this time, I'm pretty sure, you know, in order to create something like this is, not sure if I would have the patience to work on all of that. But just know that there's offices that specialize on that. Take it easy, right? Just work on one little one. I mean, like that. That's pretty outstanding, right? Right? Is it an image or rendering? Of course, all of these are renderings. All right, guys. So all of those, your favorite architects that you see the renderings. I mean, some of them might be done by them in-house. Some of them, you know, you send them to some of this. Now, this is a pretty high-end one. You know, all of a sudden, there's a lot of in India or China, all these offices that they create renderings for you. Like this is ridiculous, right? I mean, but still, I mean, some of this shine right here that looks kind of odd. The floor looks kind of weird. This place right here where her feet meet, right? This right here. But it's nice to study them, definitely. Anyway, guys, fun stuff. All right, guys. So